Nice to see you.
I won't be taking all the time I'm granted. Good morning, Council. I'm an environmental activist, consumer advocate, and I serve on the city's Resource Management Commission. I'm speaking about Austin's conservation plan. What is in the conservation plan is not written in stone. The day after you pass it, Austin can establish strategies and programs to increase water savings by much more aggressive volumes. But symbolism accounts for something. As of 8 a.m. this morning, the Highland Lakes were only 43% full. We need to show the public a more aggressive strategy. Let me give you one example. In at least 4 large Texas cities, landscape irrigation rates for commercial customers are substantially higher than regular commercial water rates. Yet Austin does not have a commercial irrigation rate. All we have is a slight increase in volume rates in 4 summer months. However, when I check the statistics, Austin commercial bills per 1,000 gallons actually fall in the summer due to water volume in these months divided into the fixed monthly charge. We are giving a slight discount for the luxury of watering grass, while San Antonio's water utility appears to be charging more than double its normal commercial water rate for irrigation. One other observation on a similar note is that as of a week ago, there was nothing about water consumption or conservation being discussed in the sustainability bonds that will be presented to Council in the near future. Before I go, and this is the last thing I'll say, before I go, I want to state that I've not been here in a couple months, so I've not seen this new restricted area around the dais. During meetings, this is entirely justified, but it restricts informal conveyance of information to Council when not in session. This new rail kind of symbolizes like you don't want to hear from us when you're not in session. Respectfully, thank you.
After Bobby Levinsky is William Bunch, Roy Whaley, Monica Guzman.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Bobby Levinsky. I'm with the Save Our Springs Alliance. This is actually a really good item to point out that 90% of what we're probably saying right now could probably be resolved if this were just sent back to the Water Forward Task Force. They didn't get an adequate time to review the items, and that's usually where we can create a lot of compromise and save you guys some time. But it is nice to actually have time to make a real point. So for these items, we really need to take into account what our lake storage levels are. So right now, we're sitting about 42% for our 2 lakes. That's not uncommon. Not anymore. It's going to get worse. Let me get to the next slide. Oh, sorry. This is what it's going to look like for this summer. We're going to be hitting stage 3 by July. Your Water Forward Task Force put together some, worked with the University of Texas on various scenarios for our water future. They did 666 scenarios. Of those, 40% of them had us hitting the water target mark where we have to start paying LCRA for our water in about 23 to 30 years, somewhere around there. This is a really serious item that needs adequate attention. I'm also serving on the cost of service study right now. And I would imagine that because the utility is in a bad state right now, we want to sell more water. That counters our goals. And so what we have to do instead is stop investing so much on large-scale infrastructure, delay some of those projects out, so that way we can not have a 22% increase on our lowest income families in the city. That's what you're going to be proposing, that lowest block rate. Water conservation saves money if we don't keep spending and we invest seriously in water conservation. That means that the next step we're going to have to do is going to be it's going to be more rough. It's going to be asking those commercial users to stop watering so much. That's not considered a low-hanging fruit. That's not in your draft plan right now. That's something that we could just add. We could go to those commercials and say, we want you to zero-scape. And you could save a lot of water just by instituting that. But we are having this conversation now, and that conversation needs to be had by the Water Forward Task Force. So let's not do this today and just agree to postpone it. Let the Water Forward Task Force save you guys some time, and let's get the community involved in this. Thank you.
Bill Bunch, Roy Whaley, Monica Guzman. Bill Bunch has signed up for 4, 5, 6, 14, 16, 22, 37, 48, 68, 98 for a total of 30 minutes.
Good morning, Mayor, council members. Bill Bunch with Save Our Springs Alliance. Thank you for your service to our community. Just for confirmation, because of the security delay, I did not hear at the very beginning. 4, 5, and 6 are still on the consent agenda. Is that correct?
Yes.
And is 16?
All of the items you're signed up to speak are on the consent agenda.
Well, okay. All the ones. I don't think so.
That's why she indicated you had 30 minutes.
Well, I know I'm signed up for stuff that's not on there, but I appreciate it. I would ask you to pull this. Our water conservation plan, drought contingency plan, those are super important. I mean, this should be starting to register with y'all. I mean, y'all are sleepwalking through a crisis. And you're sitting here ready to vote on consent. No dissent, no discussion, no questions on a plan that literally goes backwards on our conservation goals. For the first time since literally the early 80s, our city's consumption of water is going up. Our conservation gains, our reuse gains are not keeping pace with population growth. And they've done that, surprisingly, amazingly, with wholesale community buy-in, literally for decades. And now, right when we understand that we don't have reliable water, we really don't. And this ties into item 22. 1.2 million for Hoffpauir Consulting. I'm guessing y'all haven't looked at that at all either. I'm guessing absolutely none of you have actually read the Water Conservation Plan. Have any of you? Mr. Alter, thank you. And Councilmember Alter number 2, thank you. I appreciate the rest of you recognizing that you haven't and being honest about that. And it's not your fault because the staff sprung it on the Water Task Force. They wanted them to vote on it by giving it to them 2 hours before their meeting. And they said, no, we're not doing that. And they set a second meeting with 1 week's notice. And they have refused to endorse this. And y'all should refuse to endorse this. You need to send this back, as Mr. Levinsky asked you to the task force. And we need to set conservation goals that keep our total use of the Highland Lakes at minimum sustainable and flat like we've been doing for decades. And what we really have to do is we have to start beating population growth and reducing our total use. Because what Hoffpauir Consulting is telling us, and they need to tell you what their preliminary results are already. because I'm fairly certain they have them. And that is, we don't have the water in the Highland Lakes that we've been betting on and planning on. The firm annual yield of the Highland Lakes is greatly reduced in the face of climate heating. And we can't whistle past the graveyard anymore. We think it's wet. We've had a lot of rain, but it hadn't been that much rain. If you look at the Highland Lakes over the last few months, they've stayed flat. They haven't refilled at all. The runoff into our water supply lakes has kept pace with evaporation and consumption, but that's it. And this is our wet season. And the long-range forecasts tell us we're going into La Nina, hotter and drier. And we could be repeating the drought of record from the 1950s as soon as a few months from now. Did any of y'all know that? This is a fact. Are any of you aware of it? We're not talking about something theoretical down the road. We're talking about right here and now. And yet we're wasting more water sitting here today than we did 4 or 5 years ago. We're not meeting our conservation goals. So what is the response of our water utility? To backslide and weaken and virtually eliminate conservation goals and concede that we're going to stay basically exactly where we are in the years ahead. That's unacceptable. You have no business doing this. You have no business doing it and claim that you care about sustainability or environmental protection or responsibility to ratepayers. This ties into item 14 as well. $500 million of water and wastewater refunding bonds. Now, what the backup says is that you're going to get lower rates. So on the finance side, how does that make any sense? I mean, the last I checked, we're at a time where we haven't had this high of borrowing rates in years. Is that really true? I mean, maybe it is. Do you have somebody from your staff that can get up here and tell you how we're going to get lower refinancing rates now than what we've had in previous years? And buried in there is $50 million, not just for refunding, but for funding the expansion and major capital work to Water Treatment Plant 4, which is wholly unnecessary. There's $50 million. You're worried about utilities. You're worried about utility rates. That whole thing could be set aside. In fact, you could mothball Water Treatment Plant 4, and we'd be fine, and we'd save a ton of money doing so. For those who weren't here, your utility told us we had to have Water Treatment Plant 4 because of risk management, a threat of terrorism, and that it was dangerous to have only two water plants, and we had to have a third. That was totally fabricated because we asked, where's your risk management assessment? What are your risks? And the only thing they produced was a single memo from an internal exercise that said the only real danger to our reliability, being able to provide constant, reliable water to the city, had nothing to do with only having two plants. What it had to do with is we have to have backup power for our water treatment plants, for our pump stations, for our delivery systems. And then what happened in the big freeze? We had no backup power. The one thing that they told us we had to do, they didn't do it. And that cost hundreds of millions of dollars and extreme suffering across this whole city. And yet we built a $800 million treatment plant we don't need. And we're not going to need it anytime soon We've never come even close to needing that capacity. So there's a real problem of basic integrity, honesty in City Hall. It's at the water utility. It's at the Parks Department. Y'all know this, and if you don't know it, it's time to figure it out. And you've got all of these related water items on your agenda that you don't understand, you haven't looked at, and you're ready to just slide them right through. You need a special work session, or 2 or 3, on our water situation right away. And if you did that, you wouldn't have to have these giant long meetings. Our charter says you're supposed to meet at least once a week. That's not happening. So what's the response of not meeting? And that's from back when it was a volunteer job or it was paid almost nothing. But now that you're nicely paid, you can't afford to meet more than twice a month. And you don't want to hear from people when you do. Our public water and our public discourse needs to change. Y'all need to understand that your citizens are you're a public resource that should be listened to, especially when they're telling you something that your staff is hiding from you or not telling you the truth about. And that happens every week on many items. Please say no to those issues. Absolutely support 22. We need to fund that consulting work. We need to see and hear about the preliminary results right away, and not a year or 2 from now. Let's see. On the Zilker Bridge, this is another one. Where our construction engineering firms have a hammerlock on the city to build big, expensive stuff that we don't need. We can save our historic Zilker Park Bridge, which your posting still refused to acknowledge as a historic bridge. There's no danger there. It can be done at a fraction of the cost, and yet here you are planning to forge ahead with another $11.6 million commitment to demolish this historic treasure and build something far more expensive, a big, giant, ugly highway bridge that will harm the creek, further pave Zilker Park, and address a fake safety issue, which can be addressed much more readily with a parallel bike ped bridge for a tiny fraction of the cost. Councilmember Ryan Alter, you know the engineering on this. That bridge is solid that we have. And demolishing it is an enormous waste and abuse of resources. It's going to cause real harm and cut people off from the park during construction. All of that completely unnecessary. And this is part of a larger piece. We're losing our heritage. Y'all are poised to send $2 to $3 billion into a black hole of a convention center, when for a rounding error, we could be saving Peter Pan mini golf. We could have saved the original Threadgills. We could have saved Threadgill's World Headquarters. We could have saved Lucy in Disguise. Do y'all care about the cultural heritage of the city at all? Billions for a convention center that's going to sit empty and bleed money year after year after year, and not just a little bit of money, tens of millions of dollars a year in operating losses. That's not even counting. And yet we could be using that hotel occupancy tax for cultural tourism, saving our history and our culture. instead of talking about how we care and we sit and do nothing. You know, Peter Pan mini golf is on the chopping block right now. You can laugh about it, but that's our heritage. That's our culture. Kids grow up for decades loving Peter Pan mini golf. And y'all could save it for pennies, literally, almost. All right. I'm going to close on item 99, setting the mega upzoning for the South Central waterfront for a hearing on May 30th. Nobody's seen a red line on this that I'm aware of. This is throwing the 2016 South Central Waterfront Vision Plan into the trash can and setting it on fire while pretending that you're actually implementing that vision. We're talking about losing our setbacks to Lady Bird Lake, letting more construction encroach right up on the shoreline. We're talking about losing parkland that was called for in the vision plan. We're talking about expanding impervious cover and losing green space that could be saved simply by maintaining impervious cover limits that are in our zoning code. And the community doesn't know about it. Y'all aren't being given the details. It's all on this very rush, high-level basis that we have to have downtown skyscrapers jump across the lake and occupy, over 100 acres more. Skyscrapers that are not climate friendly. They're climate killers because of the added steel and concrete that it takes to build tall. They're not affordable. I mean, you can say affordable housing all you want, but you're rushing ahead with the South Central Waterfront District that lets the developers off the hook and is providing minimal affordable housing. And then, we're going to turn around and ask the taxpayers to pay for it, through a TERS or some other mechanism that's just, welfare for the ultra-rich that we hide behind saying affordable housing dozens of times. That mega upzoning is not ready for a May 30th hearing. Please postpone that. Thank you for your consideration.
Roy Whaley. Items 4, 5, 6, 16 for a total of 12 minutes. Following Roy is Monica Guzman, Felicity Maxwell, and Irby Foster.
If your name's been called, please come down to the front.
My name is Roy Whaley. I'm the Conservation Chair for the Austin Sierra Club, and I am glad that we have the 3 minutes that have been returned to us per item. However, I do believe in brevity, and I appreciate Mr. Bunch and every important thing he said. And I do believe in democracy also at a time when nationwide there is an attack on democracy. I don't think we should be saying we don't want to hear from citizens. And that I'm done with. On the 3 drought and water issues, just simply listen to the citizens that are part of the Water Forward Task Force. They have put in a lot of time on this. They need to be heard. We need to look at that. I agree that we have to stop saying, come on to Austin, we don't have the water for you, bring a bottle of water with you. As of yesterday morning, Lake Travis was at 37.1%. I know our drinking water is Buchanan and Travis together, but a lot of our tax dollars are based on Lake Travis also. And yeah, it rained last night, and there's still water that came out of my tap this morning. And so we don't have a water problem anymore. I hope y'all don't think that. I know there are a lot of people in Austin that believe that so long as it's raining and we turn on the tap, we don't have a water problem. We do. And that means money. That is how we do have people move to Austin. Unfortunately, then we have them leave after giving them a lot of tax dollars. But that's a different issue. So yes, we do want to return this to the Water Task Force, and the reuse. Oh my gosh, we have the water. Let's use it again. Councilmember Vella, if you paid your bills and then you got that money back, wouldn't you like to reuse your money the way we can with water? We can do that with water, but we have to make a commitment to do that. And the purple pipe is important. I won't get into the whole home issue about lot sizes, reuse, tree protections. All those are very important, though. But the main thing is listen to the very smart people on the Water Forward Task Force. On item 16, that bridge is historic, and it has some minor reparable flaws. And we don't need to be swedging Barton Springs Road one lane in each direction, and then we're talking about for Zilker Park having one lane in each direction and then have this big bridge. I did and do support the bridge over at the other end of Lady Bird Lake, and I do think that's a great tourist destination and a boon for the financial situation for many on the east side. But if we're going to say there's a little bit of damage, rebar rust, well, you know, when I got here, I went in and washed my hands in one of the restrooms. There weren't any paper towels for me to dry my hands. Let's tear down City Hall and rebuild it. I mean, it's essentially the same thing. It's an easy to deal with situation. So, like I say, I do respect your time. I hope you respect the citizens and their time. And I will, no doubt, see you again later. And one of the things I do miss, I agree, part of the problem with the meetings going so long in the past is there was so much pontification from the dais. Everyone wanted to talk for 10 minutes on saying why they weren't going to support something or why they were. I understand that, but so much of it is political that it doesn't have a place on the dais. Yes, I was here many times at 2 a.m. on some of those long meetings. I didn't want to be here. I didn't want to be here any more than y'all wanted to be here. I'm not really wanting to be here right now, to be honest. And I'm sure y'all wish I wasn't here either. I could see your eyes, Mr. Mayor. I understood.
You're in absolute control of that.
Okay. But anyway, thank you for being here. I do appreciate that. But remember, you're here because you were elected to be here. That means I'm your boss. I'm one of your bosses. And I've never known of a situation where an employee could turn around to the boss and say, sit down and shut up. I just want to have this conversation. I wish y'all would reach out more to Sierra Club and all the other organizations and individuals. And with that, I'm going to say thank you for your time. I respect it. I hope you respect our time. Thank you.
Mr. Whaley.
Monica Guzman, item
What I would ask is that our professional staff come forward and make a brief presentation with regard to items 4, 5, and 6, and then I'll recognize council members for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. My name is Shay Rawls-Rolson, and I'm the director of Austin Water. And I appreciate your consideration today of items on your agenda for the Water Conservation Plan, Drought Contingency Plan updates, and the code changes that support those updates. I'd like to start by assuring all of our stakeholders that Austin Water is committed to water conservation. Our highest value water is the water we don't use, and as we conveyed to City Council when you adopted the recent reclaimed water requirements, our community's commitment to water conservation is foundational to everything we do in near and long-term water resources planning. We've seen significant success from our water conservation efforts, from 190 gallons per person per day in 2006, all the way down to 124 gallons per person per day in 2022. Conservation is why we haven't yet hit the trigger for additional payments to LCRA on the 1999 water supply contract. We have committed significant people and resources to long-term sustainability of our conservation efforts. We have an entire division of staff focused on water conservation. We're industry leaders, recognized by the Texas Living Waters Project as the top-ranked large city in Texas for water conservation. We continue to ramp up our outreach. Our annual budget for water conservation communication is $800,000. And we've also ramped up enforcement and will continue to invest in those efforts. On the communication side, we participate in the J.D. Power U.S. Water Utility Residential Customer Satisfaction Survey, which found last year that we ranked number 2 in the nation for utilities of a similar size for the awareness of our customers of our water conservation program and for our electronic communications. We continue to ramp up our efforts rolling out our automated meters, which have already produced significant water savings and give us the opportunity to communicate directly with our customers about conservation. Since 2020, we estimate that those leak alerts and direct-to-customer messages has resulted in a savings of 720 million gallons. And we are focused on reducing our water loss on the utility side. As we think about our goals for water conservation, it's important that we base those goals on our real-world experience. Those goals feed into our Water Forward plan, so they must be both forward-thinking and achievable. If we set goals we can't meet, we run the risk of creating a gap in our water supply plan. We're committed to engagement, and we will revise those plans alongside the Water Forward 2024 plan. And when Water Forward comes to Council at the end of this calendar year, we will also bring you updated water conservation and drought contingency plans. And we look forward to working with all of our stakeholders to make those plans as robust as they can be.
Thank you. I'll recognize Councilmember Allison Alter, who pulled the item, and then followed by Mayor Pro Tem Poole.
Thank you, Director Wilson. So part of the reason I wanted to pull this was for you to have that opportunity to share that commitment to conservation and these efforts by Austin Water. Can you speak also to the reason why we have this condensed time frame?
Water utilities are required to submit a water conservation plan and a drought contingency plan to the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality every 5 years. So those plans across the state are due now. As a firm customer of the Lower Colorado River Authority, our drought contingency plan must be at least as restrictive as LCRA's plan. They updated their plan last month, and so we needed to update our plan to reflect the changes that they made, which includes a new stage, so a new drought stage 3 that would go into effect when the combined storage of Lakes Travis and Buchanan is at 750,000 acre feet. Today, the storage is at 848,000 acre feet. So it's important that we adopt these plans now so that in the next likely couple of months, we will be able to go to stage 3 when LCRA goes to stage 3. We also currently have funding for our MyATX Water Smart Meter program in front of the Texas Water Development Board, and that the Water Development Board requires us to have a current water conservation plan in order to be eligible for funding.
Thank you. So there's a time sensitivity of submitting these plans at this point in time to the state, both so that we are able to invoke stage 3 this summer if necessary, and so that we are able to finish our ATX water meter program that's helping us to address the leaks. In my conversations with you, we also discussed briefly the commercial irrigation rate idea that was brought up this morning, and you had some comments on that. Can you share what Austin Water is planning with regards to that?
We are currently undergoing a cost of service study, and which will evaluate our rate design, and we will be coming forward with proposed rates in our fiscal year 25 budget for your consideration. And our rate strategy includes a new irrigation rate for commercial properties, just as was recommended by one of the speakers this morning.
Thank you. And we've had a lot of conversations over our water future between Water Forward and I created the Austin Water Oversight Committee. I serve on that committee, and I think what I want to leave you with as we vote on these is, we're going to recognize that there is some time sensitivity here. You have promised that you will amend these plans based on further conversations with our Water Forward Task Force. I very much value the opinions and the thoughts and the ideas that come forward from that task force, as do, I think, all of my colleagues. And part of the reason I pulled this is just to underscore what I think you already recognize, but I think it's important for us to reiterate that this dais is committed to addressing the drought conditions. We are committed to furthering conservation as much as we can, and it is our expectation that Austin Water is going to move in that direction. We have in motion the update to Water Forward. We have in motion the opportunities for different groups, especially the task force, to weigh in. It is our expectation that, we need to plan based on maybe conservative goals, that we are going to be taking steps that might allow us to overshoot those goals, that we need to take the drought very seriously. Maybe we need to relook at it even as a council, and I think that's what the Water Forward process is about. So I don't want to jump ahead to that, and I think that's what Austin Water is taking very seriously. But for our community who over the years have helped to push forward programs like the original Water Forward, or to help us to be a place that conserves more than average, I think our community just needed us to pause a little bit this afternoon and reiterate our commitment, both as a dais and to communicate our expectations to Austin Water.
I appreciate your comments, and I also appreciate the opportunity to commit to you all and to all of our stakeholders that we are heavily invested in water conservation, and we are invested in our communication with our stakeholders, and we are currently developing the portfolios of strategies that will be included in the Water Forward 2024 update. And so we have a series of presentations and conversations planned with our Water Forward Task Force on all of the strategies, including water conservation and drought contingency. And as those discussions yield additional changes we can make to our plans, we will incorporate them. So we will bring the revised plans with the updated Water Forward plan to you at the end of the year.
And I assume that there'll be a stop at the Austin Water Oversight Committee along the way for discussions specifically of the drought and conservation plan updates and also Water Forward.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Mayor Pro Tem.
Thanks, Mayor. And I just wanted to confirm you all had made presentations to the Resource Management Commission and the Water Wastewater Commission.
That is correct. So these, the plans were voting items at Resource Management Commission, which voted to approve both plans 8-0 with one abstention. And then at the Water and Wastewater Commission, they approved the water conservation. They recommended for your approval the water conservation plan 7-1 and the drought contingency plan 8-0.
Thanks. I know that Water Forward is an adaptive plan, and our staff are committed to ongoing conversations, as you reiterated and emphasized, with the stakeholders, and that also includes the Water Forward Task Force in order to strengthen the plans. Mayor, if that's it, I would like to move approval of items 4, 5, and 6.
I'll take that motion. There's a motion by the Mayor Pro Tem to approve items 4, 5, and 6, seconded by Councilmember Codry. But Councilmember Ryan Alter, did you wish to speak? I'll recognize people to be heard on the items if they wish to speak.
Thank you very much. I just want to highlight one element of this that I think in how we got here, have heard concerns both from some of the speakers today as well as people who have talked to me, how we arrived 5 years after our 2019 goals to where we were today, and have a better understanding of what went right and what didn't, and so that when we do our next 5-year plan, we position ourselves for success so that we do meet those goals. You know, we've had a lot of conversations up here about setting goals and investing in able to meet them, and so I would just ask, as part of this process, we look at not only what it takes to get there, but really also that look back of how did we get here today, just so that we can double down on the things that went right. So I really appreciate it, though. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. Any further discussion? Motion has been made and seconded to approve items 4, 5, and 6. There being no further discussion, without objection, items 4, 5, and 6 are adopted. Thank you. Thanks, council. Thank you very much. All right, that completes that portion of the agenda. What I promised we would